Uncinetto. I'm Christina, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. If you're new, welcome in. If you're returning, welcome back. No matter how long you've been here, I always appreciate your time. We are going to go on another adventure today. I'm taking you again all the way back to October when I went to the Trapani region with my daughter. And we packed so much into that trip that it's hard to believe that even going into almost 2 months later, I'm still sharing this with you all. So I have tried to space them out so it's not all like travel video, travel video, travel video. But all of these things that I've done recently were packed into one long weekend. So just to recap, right, we've seen the city of Trapani itself. We have seen the ancient city of Segesta, and I also showed you the salt pans of Trapani. Today we are going to look at some islands off the coast of Sicily called the Egadi Islands. Excuse me. And these islands are amazing to me. There are actually 5 islands, and we only went to 2 of them. One of them is, the way that it was explained to me at first was like it's a toxic island, and then when I asked further information, it's not that it's toxic like humans can't go there. It's like they said it's for like toxic people, and I was like, I don't understand what that means. I mean, I know what that means, but I don't think that it meant what they were trying to tell me it meant. And so I just kept asking different people. Like, I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Come to find out, the island is a rehabilitation center for, like, people who suffer from addiction and other things. So it's isolated, but it's also, you can't just go visit there. So you can't take trips there, you can't vacation there, those kinds of things. So I'm going to look up really quickly the names of the other islands, because we went to 2. We went to Favignana and Levanzo. And it was a boat tour, so along the coast of, along the shore there, they have all these like kiosks, and they're always asking you like, what do you want to do, whatever. They have all these different tours, and sorry. And I went up to one, and I was looking at the different options, and I was like, oh, we could do this one. And so we scheduled it for the next the next day. So it's not showing me the names of the other 2 islands. I know I have a picture that shows them all. The other one that we didn't visit is Merettimo. That's the third one that you can visit. So we didn't visit that one. And there wasn't a tour that I saw that took you to all 3. You could either do Favignana and Levanzo or Favignana and Merettimo. You couldn't do all 3 of them in one tour. So maybe that will change. I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can find... Let me see if I can find the picture that had all of the islands on it. Oh, here they are. Yeah. So you're going to see this picture in the pictures that I'm going to show you in a moment. But this was in Favignana. And so you have the 3 bigger islands. But then here are the other 2. Right. Marone and Formica, maybe. But those are the 5 islands. So these set of islands, regardless, right, are part of a marine reserve. So in order to get there, like, we had to pay for the tickets for the tour, but then we also had to pay a fee per person to kind of give back to the reserve, because we were going to be there, we were going to be visiting, we were going to be walking around. So in order to donate to the reserve, it was required, and it was a separate fee, and you got a ticket that you had to give when you got to Favignana. And then I had another ticket that we had to give when we got to Levanzo. So as we got off the boat, we had to give these tickets to them to show that we had given back to the reserve. And it wasn't a big fee. I think it was €5 for each of us, so €2.50 per island, which isn't a lot, but when you consider that every person on the boat had to pay those fees, I mean, that adds up as money to help the reserve. And this archipelago is, I mean, I was mesmerized. So a long time ago, it was used a lot for tuna fishing, and it is still somewhat, but one of the big things that they pointed out to us on the tour was going towards Favignana, and you'll start to see some pictures pop up. Going towards Favignana, there was like this little place that was one of the first tonaria, or tuna fisheries for the Florios. And Favignana, when the Florios came to Sicily and they were expanding their business, Favignana was, from what I was told, and I could be wrong, but Favignana was originally like their island. I'm not 100% sure if they owned the island or if it was like just because they brought a lot of business there and they were very wealthy that it was like their spot, so to speak. I'm not 100% clear on that. But if you remember, and if you are new here, you may not remember, I did a video about Cefalù, and my friend and I were reading, right, The Lions of Sicily. We were reading that book together. And it talks all about the Florio family. And we have heard, just being in Trapani, because that's the area. They settled in Palermo, which I still have not been to, but they settled in Palermo, and then all along that side of the island, they had all sorts of businesses. So I heard about them on that one, and also just being in Trapani and during the Salt Pan tour, we heard about the Florios. So that was one of the first things that was pointed out to us. And when we got to Favignana, we had probably an hour and a half-ish to tour the island. They did have some bicycles there that you could rent, but they didn't have like a tandem bike. So I would have gotten on a bike and ridden around with my daughter, and she could have pedaled in the back. But she's not super strong on a bike by herself, and trying to ride around an island with other people riding around on an island and cars, and it's not like there was a separate bike path that we could have taken that would have been like, easy for her. No, you were on the sidewalks and on the streets and all of that. So we just walked around. We did come across some really cool things. We walked straight up, and there was a shop that had some clothes and things, and I tried to try things on, but everything's always too small for me. But we did find some jewelry that my daughter got for some of her friends, and then I love like different kinds of knobs, like this. This I got at Hobby Lobby, but they had knobs there that were hand painted and other things, other designs. Some of them you could tell were like mass produced, but some of them were hand painted, and they were a little bit more expensive, but I got a couple of those. And then we walked. Of course, my daughter wanted gelato, so we did that. Then we came across some clothing stores. I got a t-shirt. She got a t-shirt. We got some magnets and things like that. And then we walked around and we sat in the square and just, observed life there. I later learned after we were um, back in Trapani that um, people, like the school, there's an elementary school and a middle school on Favignana for families. And then the high school is in Trapani, so they take the ferry or hydrofoil to high school, and then in the winter, families just come off the islands for the winter, so that if they have school-age children, they can go to school, because sometimes the weather is too bad and they can't get to school or get home, depending. So they just come and stay in Trapani so their children can go to school, which I thought was pretty interesting, um, because that is a very interesting dichotomy and dynamic, being on the island and seeing the pace of life there, and then being in Trapani and seeing the pace of life there. I mean, there are some differences to the pace, right? And it is interesting to see. So um, we there were so many beautiful things that I saw, and I don't think that any of my pictures capture any of the beauty. There was way up on a hill. There was a castle. We didn't get to go up there. We There was no way we would have had time, but I would love to go back and go and see it. To walk around it, even if I didn't get to go in it, right? I would just love to see it. So it's definitely going to be a trip back at some point. Um, and then when we left Favignana and we got to go swimming in the ocean, that was an experience. My daughter and I were the only women who jumped off the boat and jumped into the freezing cold water. But it was lovely. My daughter was brave, and I was so proud of her. She's been working on her swimming for a really long time, and she just dove right in. I mean, not like head first, but she jumped right in, and I mean, it was cold, so after a little while, she was clinging to me, and she was like, "Can we get off now, or can we get out now?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So we swam around for like 15 minutes, and there were other people that joined us, but we were the only females that got into the water for the first probably 10 minutes, and then there were a couple of other females that got in, but they like walked gently down the ramp. My daughter and I just like jumped in the water, and it was so beautiful to see. We drove by a couple, we were in the boat, so we went by a couple of places where we saw people swimming, and the way that you had to get down there, down the rocks and things to get to the beach areas. But it was still stunning and beautiful, and the water was amazing. I mean, it was cold, but it was amazing. And then we had lunch on the boat, which was just a penne pasta with like it was a pesto, and at first I asked if it was Sicilian pesto, because Sicilian pesto is like a reddish orange pesto, and they were like, no, no, trapanese, pesto di trapanese, and I was like, oh, okay. And the only difference, now, this is just my palate, that doesn't mean that this is the only difference, but the only difference that I could tell is there were like almonds in it. Now, it was delicious, but I also love Sicilian pesto, so I don't know the difference, and I haven't looked up the ingredients to see the difference. But it tasted delicious, and my daughter loved it. She wasn't a fan of the nuts necessarily, but I mean, she ate it, and she said it tasted good. and it was warm after being after being in the cold ocean. Excuse me. So she did enjoy it. They did have wine, but I did not partake. One, because I was with my daughter, and two, because wine gives me migraines. I don't understand. Everyone else that I know that had migraines from wine, when they come here, they say that this wine doesn't give them migraines. And I was like, I don't know. I didn't drink a lot of wine when I was in the States anyway, but I would drink like the sweeter wines. I don't really drink wine anyway, but I did not have any on the boat. We had water, and then after lunch, they had like some cannoli there that you could try. They had a couple of different fillings, um, and that was all. Well, the food was included. The dessert was not included. You had to pay separate for that if you wanted it. And then after we had our lunch, um, we were on our way to Levanzo. Now, Levanzo is smaller than Favignana. There's only one village on the island. The island itself is about 5 kilometers across. And I mean, you can walk the whole town in maybe 5 minutes. But as you walk in different directions around the town, there's like a hiking path. Now, we didn't take that because they said, oh, well, you can go swimming. We had already jumped in the ocean, and my daughter and I had already changed our clothes. I was not putting that freezing cold bathing suit back on. I wasn't doing it. But we did get to walk around and see some of the beauty and the sights there. Now that island does not have a school, so they have to go to school on Favignana for elementary school and middle school, and then they all go to high school on the main island in Trapani. So there was one place that I wanted to see in Levanzo, and it was a bread shop, and they had their doors open, but it was during Reposo time, and I think it was part of their house, but they had the bread shop, and the bread shop was closed, but they had these really amazing pictures, and the guy was like, no, privato, privato, so I couldn't, it was private, so I couldn't take a picture, but it was really interesting, like tile art and things they had on their walls, so it was amazing to just see it in general. And then, of course, more gelato. My daughter had more gelato. And we didn't have as long at that island, which, we wouldn't have really needed it necessarily, but, if we'd wanted to go hiking around. However, I did look, and there is a couple of places that you can stay on the island. So summer, of course, would be the best time to do that, but it is supposedly very relaxing. Now, again, we were only there for like maybe an hour. So there wasn't a lot of time. We didn't really need, unless we were going to go walking into people's houses, we didn't really need too much time, but we did, to be able to walk around the island and see different things, we would have definitely needed more time. And then we made our way back, and my daughter fell asleep on the way back. She did fall asleep on the way to Levanzo as well, but she definitely hardcore fell asleep on the way back to Trapani. And I was mesmerized. I know that I've already talked about how beautiful it was, but it was October and it was still warm and inviting and beautiful, and I could see myself going back there, vacationing there. I don't know. I would love to go see the other island, Marettimo, Um, so maybe even just going, and they had ferries. So the boat that I took was a tour, but they had ferries where you could go in between the islands at different times, and then they would take you to Trapani at different times. So, I mean, if you got a ticket for the ferry, you could definitely do that as well. Um, there were some cars in Favignana, and they said that there were no cars in Levanzo, but there were cars on the island. There weren't very many, but there were definitely cars. Um, but like you can't bring a car, so like there would be no reason to. Um, but there were a couple of cars that I did see there. And then again, I don't know about Maritimo because we didn't go. But I would love to go back and see the castle in Favignana. I would love to go visit the other island that we're allowed to visit. Um, and try my best to just relax. It's very hard for me to do something like that. But that is a place where I would not mind giving it a shot. Um, so I hope that you have enjoyed all of the beauty and all of the amazing scenery that I have shown you. Not a lot of history in this one, just a lot of beauty, a lot of water, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. And I'm glad that I could share it with you. The last thing that I'm going to share from this Trapani trip, it'll be a separate video, but is the city of Erice. So I hope that you find time to come visit that town with me as well. As always, be well, be safe, and be the change you wish to see in the world, everyone. Ciao bella!